Good evening, everyone. Dr. Twyman can talk about our experiences today getting a CT coronary angiogram. So no, I'm not sick. No, I'm not having any symptoms. I've always kind of been a biohacker for a while, so I decided to go get a state-of-the-art test that will be evaluated by a company called Cleerly Health, which we'll chat about tonight. So I'm going to give a few minutes for people to log on. I'll walk you through what my experience was today and at least the preliminary results. So hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas or the holidays if you celebrate those. While we're waiting for other people to log on, if you want, drop in your comments where you guys, calling in from tonight. Welcome. All right. Well, I'm going to get it started then. We'll catch up to other people as we go. So today, went to Excel Imaging here in St. Louis and did a CT coronary calcium score. I've done that test in the past. My score still is a big old 0. The only test you want to get a 0 on in your entire life is the CT coronary calcium score. This is a bedrock test that we use at Apollo Cardiology. It's a great test to risk stratify people into low risk or high risk of having a heart attack. As I've said many times before, calcium is supposed to be in your bones and teeth. It's not supposed to be in the artery walls. If you have calcium in the walls of your artery, that's not a great sign. It means your body's trying to repair the damage that's gone on from endothelial dysfunction, inflammation in the wall of the artery. But what you're really concerned about is if you find calcium in the walls of the artery, you're also going to find soft plaque in the arteries. And that's the stuff that tends to cause heart attacks. It's the soft plaque rupturing like a pimple or a little volcano in the wall of the artery, and then a blood clot forms. That blood clot then restricts all the blood flow downstream. So typically, if you have a lot of calcium in the arteries, over time you might have symptoms when you're exercising. You might get a significant obstruction in your coronary artery where you have shortness of breath, chest pain, tightness, or exercise intolerance. Typically, you're not going to have those symptoms until that blockage is greater than 70% in one of your coronary arteries. So remind you, your heart's about the size of your fist, and you got 3 arteries on the outside of it. And those arteries on the outside are called the coronary arteries. They're the ones that provide nutrients to the heart muscle itself. And so it's not like a sewer pipe just filling out full of sludge and you have a blockage causing a heart attack. It's that the walls of the artery have been damaged over time and the plaque ruptures, again, like a little pimple or volcano in the artery. So the CT coronary calcium score test tells you, do you have any calcium, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, especially if you're somebody younger, that's a high-risk finding, and you gotta figure out what's putting that plaque in your artery. So again, my score was 0 today. That's what I expected. So in all comers, generally about, over the age of 45, if your score is 0, your risk of heart attack is extremely low. Not 0, but reported out to be about 0.4% over the next 5 years. But as I frequently tell patients, tests don't guess. A calcium score test isn't a perfect test. So I decided to upgrade to a CT coronary angiogram. And again, this was just because I'm kind of more of a details-oriented biohacking type of person. I'm not having any symptoms. It's not a test I recommend that the average person on the street goes and gets. It's a test that I personally just wanted to get to experience it because I wanted to look at the secondary images. So I just got the final report on the CT coronary angiogram part of it. No blockages, great news. But now what happens is they're going to take those images and upload them to a service called Cleerly Health. And that's what we're going to talk more about tonight. But first I'm going to just talk about my experiences of actually getting the CT. So I've had the calcium score test before, but I've never had a CT scan that required IV contrast. I have normal kidneys, so I wasn't too concerned about my kidneys. But anytime you're going to, basically take medical radiation, there's a risk of, a lot of oxidative stress to your body. So I prepared ahead of time, took some vitamin C, some, glutathione, and some molecular hydrogen. Was it completely necessary? I don't know, but maybe it was going to help a little bit with the oxidative stress of getting this CT scan. So this is a test that I would get one time and maybe I'll repeat it in 3 to 5 years if I find anything abnormal on it. But the experience was, you're supposed to refrain from caffeine for 24 hours. That's mainly to keep your heart rate on the slow side. You can hydrate the day before and the morning of. There's no issues with drinking water. You actually want to come in hydrated. That makes it easier for them to insert an IV catheter into your antecubital vein. Then no food for at least 4 hours beforehand. And then depends on what your natural resting heart rate is. My resting heart rate is generally mid-50s to 60s. So I personally did not take a beta blocker before this study, but it is one of those things where if you're not asthmatic, have heart block, probably going to take, one dose of beta blocker 6 hours or so before the study and about an hour before the study. Usually that's metoprolol tartrate, 25 milligrams, maybe 12.5 milligrams if you're a smaller individual, very sensitive to medicines. That's just to pull your heart rate down to that 55-60 range. And the reason you want to slow your heart rate during this study is the heart is a moving organ, and they're basically trying to freeze the picture so that they can get clear images of the coronary arteries. So again, your coronary arteries sit on the outside of your heart, and your heart's beating in your chest, moving. So the faster it does that, there's more risk of motion artifacts. So this facility and almost all calcium score, should say CT angiogram places recommend that you do some type of beta blockade to slow the heart rate down. So they do initially a calcium score test, make sure they kind of got you in the right position. There's a few breath holds that you do. Most of them weren't too challenging, but there was one I think it seemed like it was more than 30 seconds, and I just didn't know it was going to be a 30-second one, so you do feel kind of a little bit air hungry for a second, but wasn't too bad. After you get kind of the scout images, then they bring out of the machine, place the IV in your intracubital vein, and then do a test injection to make sure that, again, it kind of circulates around appropriately, and then they do the full-on study. But you're laying on your back, hands are over your head, and feet first into the scanner, so no issues with claustrophobia. But then when they get ready for the full-on images, they did give me 5 milligrams of IV metoprolol just to bring the heart rate down a little bit. And my heart rate was like right at 72 right before they did that, and they were down like the mid-60s. They were just nervous sitting in the scanner and thinking about what if I found something abnormal. I'm supposed to be this heart attack prevention expert. I would still fix it if I find it myself, but I think maybe that's what jacked my heart rate up a couple points more than my baseline. But then they also gave you a sublingual nitroglycerin. So, nitroglycerin is something we use in the cath lab all the time to dilate the coronary arteries. As people may know it as the pill that you put under your tongue if you're having a lot of chest pain or pressure. Nitroglycerin, but just gives like a huge bolus of nitric oxide, and I've definitely talked about nitric oxide in the context of having healthy arteries, endothelial function, glycocalyx. This kind of just gives you a big jolt of nitric oxide, so the coronary arteries dilate as big as possible, and the contrast goes down there, and they get as clear pictures as possible. Generally, if you do nitroglycerin, it's probably going to give you a headache, tastes a little bit metallic. Wasn't terrible, but do a couple breath holds, they take the images. But they do warn you, and I've given, I don't know how many doses of contrast in my career when I was in the cath lab, but this is the first time ever receiving it. I used to give the instructions. You may feel warm and tingly all over. You may feel like you're going to have to urinate. Your bladder will feel full. And I got all those things. So my arms kind of went ice cold during the injection, and it felt tingly all over. And then it basically felt like somebody was stepping on a brake pedal on your bladder for about 15 seconds, and then it let up. So not horrendous. You kind of know what's coming, and it easily went away. And then after a couple more breath holds, pulled out the scanner. I sat on the side of the table for a second because I normally have blood pressure is about 105 systolic, and I didn't know what the metoprolol or the nitroglycerin were going to do. I wasn't lightheaded, so I stood up, felt fine, and then just started hydrating like crazy to kind of flush the contrast out of my system. And then went and ate a big ass breakfast, so get the protein in, and went on with my day. So again, I already got the calcium score test back. The score was 0, and the CT angiogram part of it, no obstructions, no soft plaques noted on that study, which is great. Wasn't expecting them, but now what's going to happen is they're going to take those images, they're going to upload them to a company called Cleerly Health. And Cleerly Health is a company that does some very cutting-edge analysis of the coronary artery images. I've seen a few patients for this study. It's going to be the gold standard at helping people who are more intermediate risk know how much more aggressive do you need to be with their lifestyle, their supplements, their medications to help stabilize the plaque. Because the goal is, first find the plaque, then prevent it from building up any further, and then if you can, prevent it, or I should say, start trying to get it to regress or shrink down. The body's an amazing ability to heal itself if you get out of its way, but first you got to find if it's there. So they will take those images, and they actually have an AI machine learning algorithm that views the images. And then, the plaque, sometimes will actually positively remodel. So where the lumen is, where the blood is flowing, there's no obstruction, so I'm not going to have any symptoms with exercise, but the artery sometimes gets bigger. It kind of grows outward first. and they're looking for thickness in the walls of the artery. I previously talked about CIMT scans. I still recommend those and do those routinely in my patients. It's a good surrogate for what's going on in your coronary arteries, but if you want to know your coronary arteries, this is the best test to look at the thickness of the coronary artery intima, which would indicate that there's inflammation in those walls of those arteries. And then if there's soft plaque, you want to know, is it soft and it's about to become hard plaque, which is, much better than having soft plaque that's likely to become necrotic. But the goal is find if there's any necrotic plaque. And so that's kind of the let's say, really cool factor that Cleerly Health has been able to come up with, is telling you if that soft plaque is more soft and necrotic, and that's the stuff that's more likely to rupture and cause a heart attack. So not all plaque is created equal. The Cleerly test will give a report that will go very much in detail of the plaque characterization. It'll give you the volume of the plaque. They'll tell you which arteries it's in. It'll tell you it's 10% necrotic plaque, 80% soft plaque, and 10% calcified hard plaque. Generally, the goal is to get the soft plaque to go to hard plaque or to go away completely. So I don't have a patient population yet that has gotten it, done the protocol, gone back to get the study and show it. But I've had many patients who've done the test with a calcium score test and CT angiogram, done CIMTs, done the protocols that are practiced, and we send it for the Cleerly Health test, and the plaque volume in their coronary arteries shrank by over 50% in 1 year. We were significantly pleased with that response. But knowing what is going on in that plaque is very helpful to know how aggressive to be with the treatment for that patient. The other really cool thing about it is that, again, the arteries still on the outside of the heart, they're kind of in 3D when they're rotating around. Cleerly basically takes them out and stretches it out like a road, and will show you you got a 5% plaque here, a 10% plaque here, or 20% plaque here, and gives you a roadmap that you can visually show the patients exactly what's going on in the coronary artery. So it's game-breaking technology. It's not ready for prime time yet. Some of the downsides: medical radiation, IV contrast, which can affect your kidneys if you have kidney issues. It's a test not covered by insurance, and there's two parts of the test. You have to go get a CT angiogram at a facility, so you need a doctor who will write you that prescription to go get that study. You'll have to pay that facility whatever their fee is, and then that imaging goes to Cleerly Health, and Cleerly Health also has a fee to do their AI machine learning algorithm report, and then that report goes back to your original ordering doctor. So if you're interested in that type of test and you're in the St. Louis region, reach out to my office at Apollo Cardiology, and we can help discuss if you're a good candidate for it. If you're not in the region, still reach out to us. We have a couple patients in different areas in California and Florida that we've helped get the test organized. And if it's something abnormal, then they can work with us, at Apollo Cardiology via telemedicine to kind of do a deep dive analysis, like what put that plaque in the first place and what you should do about it. But just want to share my experience on what's going on with cutting-edge cardiovascular risk assessments. The Cleerly Health test is a complete game changer for that intermediate patient who wants to know, are they doing everything right? So I think there's a few questions I'm going to answer those, and if anything else pops up, we'll go through that as well. So let's see. All right. I think somebody was asking about costs. Somebody's asking, is that the Spurdy light in the back, or is that just a blue-purple light? So no, that's not the Spurdy. This is just a UVA bulb. It's a compact fluorescent bulb that just puts out purple light. So, I tend to have that on in the evening time. Usually you don't have these bright white lights on. I just, this lit up just so you guys can see me tonight. And also just have a red LED bulb in there as well. Not doing photobiomodulation, it's just kind of helping balance out some of the things that get subtracted from the incandescent bulb. So the incandescent bulb, about the best you can do inside. There are some fancy LED bulbs that have purple drivers in them. I have a couple of those, but some of these lamps, wouldn't be worthwhile to put in a $50 or $60 bulb. So just put an incandescent bulb in and then add back UVA and some of the red spectrums of light. And then what's the cost? It's going to depend on a couple things. Generally the Cleerly portion of the test is $750. Where you go in your local environment for the CT angiogram part, it's going to vary. I've seen as low as like $350. I personally paid $650 today for it. test not covered by insurance, especially if you're not having symptoms. They're never going to cover this test. But if you're kind of a hardcore biohacker, or you just really want to know, it's a great investment. I'm 45, almost 46. Plan to be around here at least double this age, hopefully more. And I had a grandma make it to 106, and still going to try to beat her record. And atherosclerosis is the number one thing that still takes out most people. So if I have a calcium score of 0 and no real badness found on this Cleerly test, I think I must be doing something right and help my patients do those things as well. So if there's any other questions tonight, happy to answer them. Otherwise, next week, Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, we'll do a live Q&A, kind of open the year with questions of cardiovascular health. We talk about diagnostic tests, CT Coronary Angiograms. Cool, talk about that. CIMTs, endopads, max pulse, 24-hour blood pressure monitors. We'll talk about all that kind of screening things if you want. I will owe you guys still that heart rate variability talk. Probably do that the second or third week in January. But if there's any other topics you're dying for me to talk about, just drop them in the comments or shoot me a DM on it. The other thing I want to share with you guys tonight is that starting next year at Apollo Cardiology, we're going to launch this heart attack proof program or membership. It's optional for my current patients, so if you're my current patient, nothing changes for you. But I talk about a lot of these cool technologies that come out. We try to acquire the ones we can and put them in Apollo 2.0. But we're going to kind of have it bundled together where it's a membership for 12 months. We screen your arteries at day 0, find out what's going on, and then every 90 days quarterly, we check in, blood work, imaging if required, and then at 12 months, potentially send you off on one of these Cleerly tests or some other test that looks at the health of the arteries and show you if we could, that we get the plaque to at least stabilize. But ideally, we're going to try to see if we can get your plaque to shrink down, try to reverse that disease in your arteries. And that's not something that I'm not going to say I'm going to promise everybody, but I've seen enough to know that it is possible. So if you're interested in something like that, it's going to be called Heart Attack Proof because that's my goal. If you want to learn more, just continue following me here on Instagram. I'll be dropping stuff in my stories. But probably sometime early in January, I'll be doing kind of a webinar. Probably will be via Zoom, so I'll leave the link in one of my stories. If you're one of my patients watching this video, I'll send it out in my email list. So I do have an email list that goes out generally once or twice a month. Usually share some videos that I've either been interviewed on or share these videos that I do here. But I also share updates about Apollo 2.0 here in St. Louis. So thank you guys for your attention tonight. Hope you guys have a great New Year's Eve. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next Monday.